A few hours ago, speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte complained that the situation on the battlefield was developing in a scenario unfavorable to the Ukrainian army. According to him, NATO countries are not doing enough for Kiev's victory in the current conflict. Mark Rutte noted that if Russia wins the current war, the NATO countries will lose trillions of dollars. In particular, Mark Rutte stressed that Ukraine's defeat would force all Western countries to spend not only the agreed-upon 3% of GDP on defense, but also significant amounts of money to contain the Russian threat in Europe. Against this backdrop, the head of the North Atlantic Alliance called on all Western countries to make every effort to ensure that Ukraine gets an advantageous position in the upcoming negotiations with Russia. To do this, Mark Rutte demanded that the leaders of European countries send part of the funds allocated for the payment of pensions and social insurance to arms production for the Ukrainian army. In his opinion, defense spending is much more important than financing social security and the healthcare system. Thus, Mark Rutte made it clear that inflicting a strategic defeat on the Russian Federation is the main priority of all NATO members. And in order to achieve this goal, the current Western leaders are even willing to sacrifice the quality of life of ordinary European citizens. It is worth noting that Mark Rutte made this statement immediately after war correspondents reported on another Russian army's success on the battlefield. In particular, on the morning of January 23, war correspondents reported that immediately after the liberation of the settlement of Nikolaevo-Dorino, in the southwestern part of the Kursk region, Russian troops continued to develop their success, and within 24 hours, liberated about 5 square kilometers of the territory east of the settlement of Nizhny Klin. In addition, it is reported that Russian units of the group of troops under the designation Sever have also achieved tactical successes in the Sudza area. In particular, it became known that the Russian Marines of the elite 155th Brigade of the Pacific Fleet almost completely liberated the settlement of Kurilovka, to the southeast of Sudza. As of January 24, it is reported that 90% of this settlement's territory is under Russian forces' control, while the remaining 10% has moved into the so-called gray zone. Moreover, while the so-called European leaders were hanging around with the Kiev clown in Davos, trying to calm him down with more empty promises, German military observer Julian Rutte admitted that the Russian military department could officially announce the liberation of cities such as Toretsk, Velikaya Novoselka, and Chasiv Yar in the coming days. At the same time, this German journalist admitted that the cities of Toretsk and Velikaya Novoselka are actually completely under the control of the Russian army. It is reported that in these cities, there are still several pockets of resistance, which will be completely destroyed by Russian troops in the coming days or even hours. The situation of the Ukrainian army has also become critical in Chasiv Yar. War correspondents have confirmed that as of January 24, 2025, Russian troops control most of the city. According to them, after Russian troops took full control of the refractory plant, only the administrative center of the city, and a small suburban area in the western part of Chasiv Yar, remained under the control of the Ukrainian army. Moreover, the rapid advance of Russian army units in the southern part of Chasiv Yar led to the fact that a whole platoon of Ukrainian soldiers was surrounded in the area of such central streets as Pushkin and Kamenka. Simultaneously with this, the Ukrainian General Staff officially declared that Russian troops could invade the Dnipropetrovsk region in the coming weeks. It is reported that Russian troops approached the border of the Dnipropetrovsk region at a distance of 4 kilometers. According to the Ukrainian military department, the battle for the Dnipropetrovsk region may begin in the first days of March. Against this backdrop, many noticed that the head of the Kiev regime, Volodymyr Zelensky, while in Davos, began to behave very irritably and made rather harsh statements against Kiev's so-called Western allies. In particular, during an interview with American journalists from the Bloomberg agency, Volodymyr Zelensky bluntly stated that if the United States and European countries refuse to send a 200,000-strong army to Ukraine, Russian troops will not stop and will reach the western borders of Ukraine. At the same time, he stressed that Europe is afraid of Russia, and that without the participation of the United States, European countries will refuse to resist Moscow. According to Volodymyr Zelensky, in order to stop Russia, the armies of NATO countries should be located on the combat contact line, and not in the centers of major Ukrainian cities. Moreover, the head of the Kiev regime also admitted that if Donald Trump gives strong security guarantees for Kiev and prevents the Russian army from further advancing deep into Ukrainian territory, he is ready to make territorial concessions to Moscow. In particular, he said that Kiev is ready to start negotiations with Putin and even abandon the demand for the returning Russian army to the borders of 2022 if Donald Trump sends American peacekeepers to Ukraine and forces European countries to do the same. Thus, this political clown actually recognized Russia's victory in the current conflict. At the same time, it is worth noting that throughout the entire interview, Volodymyr Zelensky constantly tried to shift responsibility for Ukraine's failures to the United States and European countries. According to him, the future of Ukraine depends entirely on Washington and Brussels. With this statement, the head of the Kiev regime made it clear that if Ukraine disappears from the world map, then only the United States and European countries will be to blame. Former advisor to the head of the Kiev regime, Alexei Arestovich, immediately responded to these statements by Zelensky. In particular, he said that Volodymyr Zelensky will face a grim fate. According to him, the citizens of Ukraine, who lost hundreds of thousands of their loved ones in this war, will not forgive Zelensky for this defeat. Many Ukrainians do not understand why the head of the Kiev regime sacrificed almost 1 million Ukrainian soldiers in order to eventually accept territorial losses and capitulate. Alexei Arestovich also admitted that starting in 2022, Zelensky and his entourage stole about $2 billion intended for the purchase of artillery shells for the Ukrainian army. I assure you that after the war, Volodymyr Zelensky and his entourage will face criminal prosecution and arrest. They will all be arrested and punished. And an active judgment on these war criminals will be conducted by the Ukrainian people, Alexei Arestovich said.